the very first major crisis that I had in my adult life was having a brain tumor. And that in season of, will I live? Will it be cancer? When I have surgery, will I be blind? Because it was a pretty high percentage that I could come out without my vision of the surgery. And what does that look like for the rest of my life? Like, I don't know what happens, and having to have those tough conversations. And my girls were young. They were 4 and 6 years old. And, being really sick for a long time and being dismissed by doctors and not feeling myself. You go from living I won't say I was in the best healthy shape at that point, but it's really what turned my life around. And so that was a really hard season, because living in sickness and then not, really having to be your own advocate, and then facing surgery, and a surgery that did not happen here in the Charlotte area, but happened in Charleston, and having, doctors down there and coming home. That was a very, very difficult season.
Well, hello, friends. Good morning, Women of Fort Mill podcast. We are so excited for you to join us for another episode. I am joined by the greatest, most inspiring co-host, Kelly Hoover, and we're looking forward to talking about something that is very relevant, because we all go through some really challenging seasons where we feel like crisis just happens and bombs are dropped in our lives, and we have to still show up and be a great mom and wife and sister and friend and do all the things despite these really big challenges coming up. So we're excited that you joined us here. Kelly, what are your thoughts on this topic? Because you've never had really anything hard happen in your life. You just, it's been pretty easy.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
just like daisies all the time.
Yep, that's what I thought.
I think it's a great topic, because I had a very impactful time in my life, and I constantly quote this when I think about crisis and I think about really hard times in different people's lives, that I refer to them as a storm. And I really believe that we're either in a storm, we're heading out of one. And if you cannot relate to being in one right now or coming out of one, I promise you it is ahead of you. And so getting yourself together and getting things put in place for when a crisis comes, because we all will be faced with many. And so I'm excited about the topic today, because I think it's very relevant. And I think it's one that everything we go for, we can look back on and say, I loved how I handled this part, but this part I can improve on. So I'm excited for today's topic.
Yes. So let's talk about tools that we can use, because like you said, if you're thinking, oh, I really had a pretty simple life, at some point you will think about this episode and think, I'm in crisis mode here. So let's talk about tools that we can use, support that we need, just the reality of going through it, what it looks like, that we do have to have more grace for ourselves as well as others. I think, we see all these quotes all the time where it's, kindness is the best thing we can lead with, because you have no idea who the person you're talking to, what kind of day they're having. And sometimes we don't know what kind of crisis the people in our lives are going through. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about this. And I know I mentioned, oh yeah, Kelly, you've never been through anything, but I say that because if someone had just met you, they might think that, because you still show up, but they have no idea really some of the things that could have made you crumble. I mean, big things in your life, anything that comes to mind, because I know there are a lot of things that you have navigated through. Anything that initially comes to mind as being, what, if I would have handled this differently, my life could have gone a different path and wouldn't look like it does today.
Yeah, I think one of the main first real adult crisis that I faced in my life, and yes, I've had many. And, I think most people are dealing with something in their current life, and I know we both have things that are struggles that we're living through daily today. But I think the very first major crisis that I had in my adult life was having a brain tumor. And that in season of, will I live? Will it be cancer? When I have surgery, will I be blind? Because it was a pretty high percentage that I could come out without my vision of the surgery. And what does that look like for the rest of my life? Like, I don't know what happens, and having to have those tough conversations. And my girls were young. They were 4 and 6 years old. And, being really sick for a long time and being dismissed by doctors and not feeling myself. You go from living I won't say I was in the best healthy shape at that point, but it's really what turned my life around. And so that was a really hard season because living in sickness and then not, really having to be your own advocate and then facing surgery, and a surgery that did not happen here in the Charlotte area, but happened in Charleston, and having, doctors down there and coming home. That was a very, very difficult season, but really approaching it. And I think the number one like tool that I had then, and I didn't even know that I was being prepared for this. I mentioned the storm, but it was in a church sermon that I heard, a sermon, one simple Sunday, a 30-minute sermon about the storms. And I took to heart, and I really resonated with that. And I thought through it, and I thought, gosh, I don't have anything hard in my life right now. Life is great. I have a great husband. I have 2 healthy children. And I knew that something hard had to have been coming based off of this. And there it was. And I think going through that season and just knowing that it's out of my control. And I think a tool is knowing what you can control and what you can't. And yes, I could have approached it and said, did I feel sorry for myself? I definitely had moments of feeling sorry for myself. Like, why me? But for the most part, I realized I can't control that I have this going on. All I can control is my attitude towards it, the effort I put, and how I can potentially inspire others or myself to overcome challenging things. Most people can't relate to having a brain tumor, but they can relate to how to handle a challenging crisis. And I think through that first major crisis was having the right people around you, knowing that I am going to look at this as a positive. And now looking back on it, I just celebrated 10 years in the month of June of 2025 that I was post brain surgery, and it has been the biggest blessing in my life. And it wasn't because it wasn't hard. It was really, really hard, but it was because I decided this is a line in the sand. Every day of my life will count moving forward. I will not crumble because of this. I will learn a lesson, and it will be hard, but I will overcome, and I will learn to live every day and prioritize and have different boundaries. So I think when I think about a hard season and when things got really heavy, and the tools that I took out of it was gratitude, was being surrounded around waking up every day going, I have today to live, and what will I do today? And so, Leah, you as well, I know that you have had some substantial challenges in your life. And so tell us a little bit about, a lesson that you specifically, that season when you felt like showing up was near impossible, but you did it anyway. What did you do to make yourself still show up when it seemed impossible?
It was, well, a lot of things come to mind, the things that are relevant now, but so much of what molded me into Leah today, which is a very different person, was one of the biggest pivotal moments of a series of moments in my life, which was 10, 11 years ago, when, going through a deciding that it was okay to end a marriage. And while anybody else on the surface would have been like, Leah, you are being abused in every way. Of course you can. But, it's a big deal when you come from a very traditional household where when you get married, you don't get divorced. To finally say, and it was when my brother passed away that I realized, I don't know how long we have here. This is not the kind of life that we're supposed to live. We're not supposed to live in bondage. This is not what God designed us for. So it was stepping away from that with no idea financially how it was going to work. Emotionally, I was such a broken, insecure person. So it was hard, but I think, in those moments where it wasn't life or death, some of the fears that maybe crept in for you 10 years ago where, oh my gosh, am I still going to be here or not? It wasn't that extreme, but going through the mental hurdle of, am I good? I told you before, am I good enough? Can I turn something awful into something great? And that's when I started listening to other people. Like I always say, Tony Robbins was my virtual mentor. He doesn't know it to this day, but he and a lot of other people that I listened to, and I started to realize what a lot of us, see clearly now, is that many of the people that achieved the most, made the greatest impact, I can't recall any of them that had an easy life. In fact, many of them went through even harder things than I did. So I think seeing those examples of other people, that gave me the inspiration, and it really gave me the confidence that I didn't have on my own, to know that they can do this maybe I can do it too. And
Mhm.
making micro improvements, building confidence slowly when I started to implement what I would say to myself, or at least catching myself when I would think, you're not smart enough, or this won't work for you because you came from a not so well off family. Catching myself and then slowly starting to reframe those thoughts. That was big for me. It took a while to reframe how I saw myself, life, the world. But I think the confidence that comes from making those small choices, it could be as simple as I get up at 5:30 or 6 a.m. every day. And that is just the thing that you stick to. That builds your confidence and teaches your subconscious you can do anything you decide to do. So
Mhm.
whether it's big, small, hard, like you decide you're going to do it, it's not a question of whether you can. It's just, how many times do you have to do it over and over again before you master it? So yeah, that radically changed my life as that shift. And thank you, Tony Robbins, for being the mentor that I didn't have.
He is amazing. Yes, he is. Still to this day, he is serving.
I can't imagine the mental battle that you had, especially knowing, your girls were so little at the time. Were there any lies that you had to combat, telling yourself, or things that you had to create boundaries for that would be easy to, be easy to go to a dark place, or just not look forward and focus on the things that you can control, like you said? Any of those things that you really had to work through to move out of your way, get the lies out, and focus on what you can control and what's important?
Yeah. So I know a lot of people have probably heard of, picking up the rug and sweeping the stuff underneath it and then putting the rug down, right? Like, and in a lot of things in life, that's not a good thing to have. We need to deal with our problems. We need to face them head on. But in this situation, it was a tool that I used in preparation. Once I knew I was going to have surgery, I selected the surgeon and realized, like, okay, I've got a 2-3 week kind of prep before I need to make this happen. And having those conversations, there's a lot of mental battles. There's a lot of lies that you tell yourself. There's a lot of things that go on in your mind. And I had to, every time those things crept in, it was like, pick the rug up, push them under, put the rug down. Like, we don't need to deal with it because we don't even know if we're facing it. A lot of times I think as women, we're going through a crisis in our life, and we begin to play out things that quote unquote could happen. These stories that we begin to tell ourselves that are not true. They are possibilities that they could be true. But we create all this anxiety and this depression and this worry around things that could happen, but they're not actually happening. And we play them out, and it can be incredibly damaging. So I think that is, it was a lot of lies that could have played out. And it's not like they didn't, but I became very good. And it was like having a just warrior cage around my thoughts. And every time I'd have one of those, I would go get myself busy. I would go do something that preoccupied, that switched that negative thought, light switch off in my brain and turned the one on that is like abundance and gratitude. And you've got this, and you're going to come out with a different story than that lie you're believing. And it literally is like picking the rug up and sweeping the head talk trash underneath and putting it down. And the great thing is that in a lot of crisis, all those things we tell ourselves, we don't sometimes have to deal with them because they are lies and they're not our truths. They are just things, anxieties that are scaring us. So I believe that whatever your crisis is, whatever your challenges that you're dealing with, a lot of the things that go on in our head is head trash, and it is things that are not true. And it's just these constant thoughts that we deal with. And so I definitely think that is relatable, whether it was a brain tumor or anything that we deal with in life. And so, one of the things, Leah, I think is so important for this topic is showing up. We talk a lot about showing up, but like, this is like how not to crumble in life when things are really hard, when you have a crisis, and truly showing up and not making it look like it doesn't have to be Pinterest version. It doesn't have to be Etsy perfect, Instagram worthy. It is just showing up. And what does that look like for you, for others that you have seen, like showing up in real life during, like, you are literally, if you are living this life, there's women out there that are listening to this episode that are living a crisis, and they are like, I don't know how to show up. Like, what does that look like? What does it look like to show up in your everyday life when you have these challenges going on?
Well, I know each of us are dealing with different things. And so it's hard to, even if we've gone through the same thing, whether it's severe abuse or someone who's passed away or a divorce or an almost death experience, while we can connect, we don't know exactly what it's like for the other person. But I think the biggest tool that we can use is looking at what is going on and realizing that it is okay for the other things, especially for the big drivers, where we're like, oh, I'm slowing down on my goals. I'm not making progress because all these other things are happening. To know that the things have purpose and they're supposed to be in our life, no matter how hard they are. What comes to mind for me is, and we're still on the journey with our son, but dealing with a really, really challenging season with him, the kind where you question, why did I become a parent? I don't think I can do this. I don't think I have the capacity to be that patient mom. This is so hard. While my mom was in hospice and wanting to be there for her, and while running a business and wanting to build it, and then not forget about my spouse in the background that was like, hello, I'm still here. I think it means not committing to more than we can handle. So that's one thing. Some of the things that maybe on a typical, normal, not chaotic season, we might say, yeah, I can go to that. Yeah, I can lead that thing. Or yes, I'm going to host this, and being okay with reducing that, knowing that it will be okay. What is happening right now teaches you the things we have to learn to be the better parent, to get to the next phase in our business. Whatever the things that drive us, that make us feel fulfilled, these hard things that we're going through help us be capable of having the bigger business, being that incredible parent that we want to be. And that's hard. That's a hard thing, especially for a woman who is really driven and loves the feeling of making progress, to feel like you are slowing down because bombs have dropped on your life. It's so hard. But I think that perspective, and I did not do a perfect job. I still don't do a perfect job. But when I'm able to reset, that is what helps me know that what's in my control, this thing is here to teach me something. Just like people have told me, Leah, your son was here for you. There are things you needed to learn, and that is why you were going through this. That's all I need to know to keep moving forward. So that's what comes to mind immediately, is just that perspective of, cutting out extra things and knowing that it's okay. Having them in your life isn't going to be the thing that moves you forward. The growth from the hard thing you're going through is going to be what moves you forward. What would you say when you think about all of the many seasons, knowing that your values or your family is number one, and anyone that knows you, whether they've known you for 5 seconds or 15 years, knows that family comes first? What would you say was on the other side of these really hard things, whether it was what you went through personally, the different seasons of being a mom and the challenges that come with that? We haven't talked about marriage in great detail a lot, but that alone, being married, that requires a lot of intentional effort. So what are one or two things that have been on the other side for you of working through these chaotic, really challenging things that would make some people crumble?
I think communication is so key, whether it's communicating with your spouse, with your children, with yourself, with your friends, whoever it is that is in that crisis mode with you, the people who are your support system, like having them, leaning on people. I think when you're in those times, knowing that you can't show up for it all. I know specifically when I have been in tough moments, realizing that all these frivolous little things, I love to host a good party. Like I love a theme. I love to do all the things. And those are the kind of things that you have to let go. And some of the other things that don't matter, they just don't matter. And I think it's knowing priorities and communication. Those would be my top things that I think serve you the best. And just knowing, like, when you're in a space, you're in that survival mode. It's like communicating your emotions, specifically with your spouse, telling them how you feel, telling them when you're frustrated. It's okay to cry. It's okay to let it go. It's okay to scream. It's okay to be alone. It's okay for all of these emotions, but you just have to have them. And I know specifically sometimes we women are pretty good at that, but maybe our spouses, they're not. And so allowing them the space to be able to have those same emotions and express it, I think is key, because you never want to be in a relationship when you're going through a really hard time that someone doesn't know how you feel. And so I think that is key. And then I think obviously being able to have priorities and have those boundaries in place are so incredibly key. And that is when you're in it and when you're coming out of it, because there are certain things in life that, when you have something significant, it's not like you get out of the crisis and like, you're like, okay, things are better now. We go back to normal. You're changed forever. You lose a loved one. Your child goes through something. Like, your life is changed forever. You don't go back to the same. I mean, I have used the phrase so much that you mourn that life. And there has been many seasons of life where I had to mourn what I thought would be, or I thought, this would be a certain way, and it's not, and it ever won't be. And you have to say that is okay. There is something better and there is a reason. And having that out there and just being able to communicate, I think is so incredibly important. And so those are definitely my top two things. And Leah, I think that in closing, sharing one or two of those of yours as well, I think is so important for our guests to hear.
Well, something that I resonate a lot with, and I believe a lot of other women do, is our worth and our value a lot of times is equated to our output. How many things we've checked off of our to-do list is my value meter for that day. Was this a good day? Because I checked off a lot of things, and removing that, which is still challenging for me, but I think that is a gift when we embrace that, is that who we are is separate from the things that we've accomplished, the number of friends we have. And what really matters is, how did I make my child feel today? Did I make sure he felt loved? Did I make sure my spouse knew that I was there for them? Did I give myself grace in this really hard season? Those are the things that matter. And the lessons that we learn through the hard things, seeing them as a gift instead of why me, but instead, well, why me? Just everything turns into something good for me. So something good must be coming out of this ultimately. That redirection and focus, you can get through anything. If you know there's always good on the other side, you plow through as much mud as you need to get through. And once again, I say this not coming from a standpoint of like, I mastered this. I have to remind myself of this on the hour, many times during the day. But I have found that it changes everything when you see through that lens. So ladies, we appreciate you listening in. Hopefully you have found something that connects with you, resonates. If you are going through a hard season, remember that there are others going through maybe not the exact same thing, but other people, other women feel the same pressures, and knowing that everything has a purpose. You may have to start saying no to things, and that is okay, but knowing that good will always come. I think Kelly and I could both say, you know what, when we have shared some of the things that we have been through, it opened up relationships. So much good has come from every life altering thing in our life. And I think if we can all see that when these things come up, we'd love for you to share this episode with a friend. If you have something that you would like for us to talk about, or someone that has changed your life and you think they should be on here because we need to share them with the other women in Fort Mill, send us a message. We would love to hear from you. We hope this episode encourages you. We can't wait to see you next week for another episode. Please rate, review wherever you listen, and we appreciate you so much. Our lives are so full of joy because of you. So have a wonderful week, and we can't wait to see you for a next episode of the Women of Fort Mill podcast.